I went online today to post about how I feel. I cringe at what they say when they tell me to get real. They say I'm just a troll. I really need to think. To shame them is my goal, so I will expose everything. Where have they all gone? All my Facebook friends, they don't share the same thoughts. Their reputation needs to end. How dare they have the gall to say such triggering words? I will dox them all because I am butthurt. Hello, Vera, to all too wonderful theatric listeners, and welcome to the third installment of my series called Stray Thoughts. My goal is to post as often as I can, bi-weekly or weekly or whatever, but knowing me, I probably won't keep it up consistently, but I will try to make this as regular of a thing as I can, even though it makes absolutely no difference to anyone whatsoever. But I will still ask you to like and subscribe because any clout is good clout. So please like and subscribe, and comment below what you would like me to talk about in future videos, or if you want to get in touch with me to collaborate or any of that fine stuff. I'm always down for that. So this is my third episode after what I felt was a pretty lackluster double debut, but I'm hoping that going forward I can work out the kinks and make something semi-worth listening to. I tried my best to edit the first two somewhat. My friend Matt helped edit the first one, which I'm very grateful for because for some reason he, unlike me, can actually stand to listen to the sound of my voice. I honestly just absolutely despise hearing myself speak to a degree that probably isn't healthy. I know no one really likes the sound of their own voice, but it's honestly enough to send me into a deep depression. I just can't stand it. It sounds so nasally and nerdy, and it sounds like someone who doesn't really know how to talk. And when I try to add a little inflection or something like that, it sounds like someone who's just trying too hard, which to me is not really saying much. And that's why I never really listen to my own podcast, and I almost never edit. And, I never edit the whole thing because honestly, if there is a hell, which I don't believe there is, but the best form of torture they could inflict upon me would just be a 24-hour loop of my own podcast. I just think, why did I say that like that? That was so awkward. That was so cringy. And it just becomes this big mess. I mean, what does my voice even sound like to you, noble listener? To me, it sounds like a mentally challenged, nerdy incel with a stopped-up nose who's so brain damaged that he can pronounce nothing right and has the vocabulary of a 2-year-old. Even if I'm ballpark, let me know. And before anybody says that I'm being too hard on myself, well, yes. But also, I'm mostly joking about it. Mostly. But I really do honestly dislike my own voice quite a bit. Despite the fact that there have been some people throughout the years who have claimed that they actually like the way that I speak, and they actually like the sound of my voice, sometimes even going so far as to call it comforting, which I don't understand. But whatever, I'm happy to take them at their word. So, what's been going on with me this past week or so? Well, for starters, I started working a new job after several months of unemployment, and that has gone quite as disastrous as one can expect. So I will be getting into that shortly, but first I'll talk about a couple of other things. First off, I finally got unbanned from Facebook after a month-long suspension. This is the 4th time I've been banned from Facebook. The first time was for 24 hours for quoting Ida, the character from Malcolm in the Middle, which was shortly after Cloris Leachman passed away, rest in peace. And I was part of a Malcolm in the Middle Facebook group, and everyone was posting their favorite Ida quotes from that character, which included some pretty distasteful quips because, she was kind of a nasty lady, kind of mean-spirited, racist, bigoted, and she had a lot of really funny lines, but, in like certain context, it wasn't the most politically correct. And someone posted a quote from a character named Raduca, who, in the episode she was in, was an immigrant, much like Ida, and Ida brought her from the old country. And Raduca is sort of influenced by American culture, and she's conveying to Ida that she's basically liberated herself, and she lifts her arm, shows her armpit, and says, "I shave now!" And Ida, averting her eyes, says, "Cover your shame, whore!" So I commented that line, in quotes, "Cover your shame, whore," and that got me reported and suspended for 24 hours, despite the fact that other people were posting far more harsh quotes, again, from the same character. I tried to appeal, but nothing. Facebook upheld their decision. The second time I got banned was in a group about feminism, or more specifically, women against feminism, where women and men, as they try to be inclusive, unlike feminism, discuss their problems with feminism. Now, of course, this attracts people of all types, and so naturally there are dissensions, and disagreements. This girl and this guy, for instance, were getting into a pretty heated debate about women's bodily autonomy, i.e., the right to abortion, of which I am, of course, pro-choice, and this guy wasn't. And he was kind of being an ass about it, basically calling this girl a whore, and like Ida. And so I stepped in to defend her, and things just kind of got ugly from there. Now, this guy said some pretty fiendish remarks and threatened violence towards me, even going so far as to actually say that he would fly me out to his state to beat my ass. I sternly warned him, "Look, you don't know me, dude. You don't know what kind of person I am. You don't know if I'm the kind of unhinged sort of person that would put a hit out on you or something. If you gave me your location, you might, bad things could happen. You might want to be careful. Not saying that about myself, but you don't know me." So now, taken out of context, that does sort of sound like a vague threat, but it was more of a word of caution than anything. But despite the fact that this guy was actively threatening violence, my comment got me banned for 3 days. The girl I was defending told me later that she reported the guy's comments, but Facebook denied her request for whatever reason, and again they denied my request for appeal. The third time I got banned, which was for an entire week, was on a group for the sitcom It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, which is a very great show, very quotable and hilarious, and someone posted something that asking us to fill in the blank, Bill Nye the blank guy. And remembering the episode where Mac and Charlie try to go swimming, but deem themselves as white trash, I decided to just comment, "Bill Nye the white trash guy." Now, of course, it's silly to call Bill Nye white trash, and I was clearly not making an actual statement about the man or his lifestyle. But even still, he is a public figure, and you are allowed to make comments about him. But if you look at the context, it was clearly a joke and just a reference to the show. And again, some of the other comments also referencing the show said far worse stuff than what I said. But I got banned for 7 days and was again denied the right for an appeal. Now, the most recent time I got banned, which was for a month, was because a certain page that I have since unfollowed, and I don't even know why I followed it in the first place, would make these pretty sexist remarks about men. And I got a bit frustrated after a while, and I just commented, "We get it. You think all men are evil." And boom! 30-day suspension for that little comment. Despite the many, many, many posts and comments demeaning men and attacking men in a derogatory way, I get personally singled out yet again. Just the other day, my friend sent me this picture that he saw posted on Facebook, and he reported it as well, and his report got denied, as Facebook apparently considered it appropriate enough for their platform. And I'm going to read you what it said. It's pretty bad. It said, "White extinction should be celebrated. The world is cheering as white genes are permanently erased. Join the fight. End whiteness. Society is waiting." So just to give you an idea of the kind of stuff that is considered okay on Facebook, but apparently quoting or referencing TV shows in quotes, calling out blatant sexism, defending a woman's bodily autonomy against a clear psychopath, is grounds for suspension. Also, you cannot talk about Bill Nye. You just can't. You can't talk about him. He's untouchable. You can't talk to anyone. You can't appeal. Once they think you've done something, they'll ignore the context and ban you. And I don't want to get in trouble. I don't know if I can get reported on YouTube for saying stuff like this, but I gotta say, screw Facebook. Screw Facebook, and the people who run it can kiss my ass. I mean, seriously. Moving on. Do you ever say something about yourself, like you put yourself down and you shouldn't, but sometimes you feel really insecure and you want to pick me up, but you don't want to tell anyone to give you a pick me up because you don't want them to think that you're just fishing for compliments. So you say something just to kind of open the door for it. You say something like, "Ugh, I feel so ugly," expecting someone to respond, "No, you're not ugly, you're beautiful." I see girls do this all the time, and it annoys me because obviously it's attention seeking, and yes, they are fishing for compliments. But I admit, sometimes when I feel low, I do the same thing. Not all the time, but sometimes. I think it's a common tactic with people who are very insecure about themselves. They're just looking for any kind of reassurance and validation. And I know it's not necessarily considered, masculine or whatever, but I don't know. I don't think there's necessarily a problem with that, as long as you don't, go overboard with it. But whenever you tell somebody that, and their response is just, "Well, looks aren't everything," it seems to imply that the person is sort of agreeing that you're ugly. Yes, you are indeed ugly, but looks aren't that important anyway. Even though they are, and we are all lying to ourselves when we say that looks don't matter. They matter more than anything, really. We lie to ourselves, but it's true. It's what everything is based on, our whole persona that people see. If a person is beautiful, people are more drawn to them and are willing to overlook any personality flaws that they may have. But if they aren't, their personality won't matter. They will automatically be written off based on their appearance. This is how it works with both men and women. It doesn't really matter. It doesn't make a difference. This is all of society. That's why beauty privilege exists. Why attractive people tend to do better in all fronts of life, except maybe talent. And why 99% of famous people are complete 10s, whereas if you're below a 7, you usually have to be a comedian playing sort of like the loser, or something like playing the ugly guy, or if you're a girl, you'd be playing like the duff. It's all about your genes, basically. It's also why people are so hyper-fixated on their appearance. Because if you are deemed unattractive, then you have so many doors closed in your face. And for me, as somebody who wanted to be an actor for a very long time, and had ambitions of the sort, and would still pursue it if I had the means to do so, and still want to continue acting whenever I get the opportunity, it's very important to me that my appearance isn't absolutely grotesque. Because if I'm really that ugly, my options for parts are going to plummet. They already have, so that's not good news for me. I guess looks don't matter to some people, but they do for most of society. And that's not always a bad thing. It kind of keeps the species going. It's human nature. It's just when we overdo it that it becomes a problem. And that's sort of whenever things like body dysmorphia kind of increases. But it makes you feel bad about yourself when you realize that someone close to you also considers you to be ugly. even if they don't outright say it. It's usually the beautiful people who say that looks don't matter. It's like when a person with a full head of hair says that going bald is no big deal. Try living in other people's shoes once in a while. And I know it's not their fault, you can't make people think you're attractive. But it doesn't mean that you're not affected by it, and it doesn't make it not hurt. My whole life I've always been compared to my siblings, and I've always had people come to me to talk about how attractive they are. Just, so many times that happens. And even whenever I've been in situations where they've only met my siblings once and they know me, they have to just tell me how handsome my brothers are or how beautiful my sister is. And then there's me, the ugly duckling, the one that no one really quite knows how to compliment. I can't even remember the last time I've been called good looking, even as a lie. I'm a total chick magnet, but I'm the opposite end. I did a live stream of my walk on Instagram recently, and it was kind of funny because not many tuned in as is expected. I have no followers and nobody would really be interested in attending my live streams anyway. But the two people that did tune in, both of whom are rather from large cities, one of them being LA, remarked about, because I was downtown in the town I live in, Palestine, that my town almost looks deserted. It certainly does look dilapidated and in total disrepair. They were surprised that I was the only one on the streets walking, which is normal to me because when I take walks, I'm always the only one out. One of them said it seemed scary that no one was around, like people were lurking in the shadows or something. But nope, people just aren't active around here. Of course, it is the summer, and it's a rather hot and humid one, so I can't really say that I blame them that much. Of course, I do it in the evening, but I doubt it would make much of a difference if I did it earlier. But it did make me realize just how boring this town is and how dead it is. All the buildings are old and there's nothing to do. It really is kind of a dead-end town. My old town was sort of the opposite. It was too crowded, and yet there still wasn't much to do. My parents seem to enjoy it here for whatever reason, and have expressed a hesitancy to move. But I frankly don't really see what they see in this town. I mean, part of that is because I have a lot of bad memories here, and I have a lot of tension with people from years ago. So that's part of it. But the other thing is, again, there's just nothing to do. And since it's East Texas, the people here, for the most part, not all of them, but a good deal of them, are rather backwards. Kind of country bumpkins and rednecks, and those are not always the kind of people that I connect with. But I don't know. The problem is likely within me. Every time I meet people, they seem to regard me instantly as pure filth. And I don't blame them, to be honest. I don't know if there's a place for me in this world. Maybe there isn't. Well, that's enough depressed musings of my own loneliness and dissatisfaction with things. Let's talk about another depressing subject, shall we? Being a dyspraxic waiter. Or a server, I guess, is the non-gendered version of it. I guess I could be known as the bumbling server. Mr. Messup, trademark. That's right. I started my new job at a local steakhouse here in town. In fact, it is located right next to the community theater, in a space that was occupied numerous times over the years, but is now owned by this rather young guy. I don't know if he's my age or maybe a little bit older, maybe even younger. I don't know. I'm getting older now. I talked in the previous episode about how the interview went, whenever I talked about the guy who looked like Santa Claus. And it was kind of awkward. I just walked in and basically got the job. I don't want to call it a mistake, because I'm happy to have gotten a job so I can make a little income. But for some reason, I didn't remember just how awful this line of work is for me. Or rather, how awful I am in this line of work. So from here, I'm going to give a little chronicle of my first week, or couple of weeks. I don't know time anymore. That I started working at this steakhouse, whose name I won't say here, though I might have mentioned it in the last episode. I don't know. Oops. So my first day was the Tuesday he had told me to come in. The young manager guy, he was there. Kind of an awkward fellow. Didn't really come across as very personable. And as I entered, he was near the front by the counter. Not sure if he was waiting for me or what, but I was a little bit early. He was there. And I smiled and I said hello. And, well, he didn't really greet me back. Which I thought was kind of weird. There was no exchange of like, how are you, anything like that. The general pleasantries. They weren't really busy. I just figured first day, a little introduction might be in order, but whatever. First thing he said to me was he just basically showed me how to clock in, which is, pretty standard. Then he gave me a brief tour of the place, showed me the walk-in, the back area where you wash dishes, and he just sort of gave me a brief rundown on the stuff that I was surely to forget in due time. It just seemed like he was like all business, He told me about how we wash our own dishes and bus our own tables and also act as host, which was different from my last server job, where we had dishwashers and we had hosts. And I'll probably talk about that at some point. There seemed to be a lot more that you had to take care of here. You had to wear a lot more hats, which to me was a little daunting. He then put me with this girl whose name I won't mention here just because it's not my place to give that info out, of course. But she immediately made it clear that she didn't think she was very good at training, which I get. No one ever really likes to train the new guy, but she was alright and generally a nice person, kind of chill. She tried to train me the best that she could, and honestly, I've definitely had worse trainers. She seemed like she was at least willing to try, whereas other people in the past wouldn't really show me anything, and seemed like just being stuck with them was the ultimate pain. Unfortunately, being dyspraxic, no amount of training will allow me to get everything down whenever I need to. It takes a very long time. It took me about 3 months to really get it down at that place, and then the pandemic shut us down. So, and I still made tons of mistakes and was sure I would get fired. Also, when I talk about this girl, I'll refer to her as Red because she has dyed red hair, though there's not much to say except that she was alright. I think she's a lesbian because she kept talking about a girlfriend. That's not really relevant, but I said it anyway. I guess in case anybody mistakenly believes that there's any sparks or anything. Anyway. Most of the first day was spent helping Red bust tables and keeping up with the dishes, which she seemed to appreciate and would thank me periodically. Honestly, I could have just done that and everything would be fine. That seemed to be the only thing I was good at anyway, was helping out other people with stuff like that. She said she was very ADHD, but you know how people just say that kind of stuff, and you can never tell if they're actually saying they have it, or if it's just like an expression. Like when someone is organized or kind of neat, and they call themselves OCD, but they don't have any of the other, major symptoms of it. At any rate, the first day wasn't completely awful because I was still training, and I didn't really do that much. Although the owner, the young guy, did get on to me pretty early on for leaning and for doing nothing, in quiet moments. Even though I didn't really know what I was supposed to do, and I didn't know how to do half the stuff there, because the thing is about training is that you can only be trained to do something whenever you need to do it, and if everything is caught up, well, there's not really much to do. It's part of me. That's the thing with me, though. If I'm not given a task, I'm lost. People assume you can always figure out what to do, and they say there's always something to do, but sometimes I just don't know what to do. When everything seems clean and stocked, like, what else is there? I like jobs where there's nothing to do, you can just bullshit around. I also realized something recently. It's really hard for me to remember, like, the orders of things, or steps in a sequence. So, like, if I'm supposed to do this, and then this, I'll forget what I'm supposed to do after the first task. Like the side work and stuff. It's like, okay, you need to do this, and then after that, you do that. Like, I'm the kind of person that needs to take care of one thing at a time. Like, I need to do this now, and then tell me what to do, what I need to do after, and then once I do that, tell me what to do after that. Don't say do this, then do this, and go and just keep giving me all these tasks, because I won't remember. I will forget, or I'll get them mixed up, and my brain will just, like, shut down. especially when I'm in the thick of it. I mean, it's such a fast-paced environment, and sometimes it's so fast-paced that your brain has a hard time processing things. The problem with being a server is that you are constantly having to scramble to get everything together, and there's so many things to keep up with, and you really have to multitask, and my brain just has a hard time with that. Eventually, another girl came in. One I remember waving at me once as I walked by when I was taking walks. So I figured, she'd probably be kind of nice, But now that I was actually working in the store, she didn't seem as friendly, and she didn't seem like she liked me at all. In fact, she seemed kind of uptight. I mean, she wasn't totally rude, per se. But again, she seemed a bit snobby, like she just didn't like me right away. Like, I don't know if it was something about me, or if it's just how she is with people. It always seems like every job, there's this, like, tall, skinny girl who's a bit of a snob. And I don't really find them attractive or anything, but like a lot of guys might, but they don't. They're kind of airheaded, and always stuck on some drama in their lives with either their friends or some stupid boyfriend or something. And they're just not very good at communication. Kind of the Gen Z type people. Not that all Gen Zs are like that. I don't want to make a generalization. I've met some Gen Zs that were good people, but you know what I mean. Young people, basically. I realize I'm making a lot of presuppositions about this girl, but most of the time my observations usually turn out to be right anyway. While I was there, no one would really talk to me unless they needed something, or if they were making sure I didn't need help with something. But of course, no one was interested in having a conversation with me or getting to know anything about me. I think they'd be surprised to find that I have a podcast, though they wouldn't be surprised at how unpopular it is. And so as it goes, surely they'll come up with their own preconceived notions about what kind of person I am without really trying to dig beneath the surface. That's always how it goes. And I'm probably guilty of that every now and then as well. So, whatever. And don't get me wrong, I'm not bitter about it. I know that's just how people are, and I don't hold it against them for not wanting to get to know me, because on some level, I'm probably to blame for that. But it is a bit frustrating when you can see an opinion form in people about you, and you can't really change that, especially when it's a negative one, like they think you're stupid, or that they think that you're just total spaz. I already know, because anytime I try to show my true personality, like making jokes or just trying to be lighthearted, I'd just be met with these awkward glances, and I would just be dismissed, basically. It's what always happens. I'll make a joke to keep things light, but they don't laugh and act like I didn't really say anything at all, or they just act confused. It's really weird, because you'd think most people would at least recognize the humor of what you're saying, even if it's not exactly funny, but they might just humor you. Most of the time, people make jokes. It's not really funny, but you laugh because it's lighthearted and it breaks the tension, and it's a way to bond with another person. Like if a person makes a little comment to indicate that's merely meant to be a joke. I give a little chuckle, at least, to indicate that I got it. And don't think my comments were clearly meant that way, or that they went over people's heads or anything, because they're basic. Another thing that's kind of funny and frustrating that always happens with me at every job is, starting out, I'm usually pretty light and personable. I'll try to crack jokes and present myself as a fun-loving, easygoing, charming kind of guy. But people will always end up pushing me away or act like I'm annoying. So I end up pulling back. And then because they don't accept me, I just retreat into a shell and just don't talk to anybody. Because again, whenever you're not accepted by people, then why would you talk to them? And that's when my reputation ends up morphing into that of a meek loner who doesn't talk to anybody. It's like I tried to talk to you, bitch. You didn't talk to me. If anybody listening to this works with me in the future, just talk to me. I'll talk to you back, and everything will be fine. If you get along with me, I'll get along with you. But it just becomes awkward because, I don't know. I have this way with people where, even though I try to seem lighthearted and affable, I just rub people the wrong way. I'm incredibly nice, and I have no trouble making little wisecracks, but it always falls through, and I never make a good impression. It's the simple fact that I'm new, maybe a guy, people are weary, and I'm automatically met with contempt. And it saddens me because I always like to get to know people, and I want to get on their good side if we're going to be working together, but it rarely ever works out like that. When it does, it's a blessing, and I still miss people I've worked with in the past, and I miss them all the more when I work at places with people like this. And it's not usually anything I'm failing at, it's just, I don't know, my vibes maybe. I'm not giving off the right aura. Maybe I'm too awkward. I know tons of people act the same way as I do, and people respond well to them. But in every situation, that's just how it is with me. I just have this magical ability to cause the same kind of hatred in other people towards me as I have towards myself. And I know it seems like the solution to that is to get rid of that hatred that's inward, but I can't really do that. And that's why I never end up really making friends. That, and people just aren't really willing to be friendly like I am, which is something that's kind of, pardon my bed creak, I had to shift positions, but that's just sort of something that I got from my dad and his dad and so on. But it's sad because I've changed a lot over the years. I've developed more of a personality, as we all do. I've grounded myself a bit. But the one constant is that it doesn't matter what I do or what I say, people just don't like me and can't accept me. And I can't do anything about that, I'm afraid. All I can do is try my best not to worry about it. But I don't want to be the kind of guy who misses out on camaraderie. I don't want to do things. I want to do things and live life making connections with people. In my heart of hearts, I've always wanted to be liked. But no matter where I am, no matter what I do, it just doesn't happen. Even if I am for a little while, it'll just turn to shit. Just like it did with my fellow dyspraxics a few months ago. Anyway, that was basically all that happened on day 1. Red went over some stuff, and then I got sent home for the first day of training. She apologized for not training me well, but I assured her that she was fine, and that I just need to find my rhythm. I can already tell from that first day that the owners most likely regretted hiring me. So anyway, on the second day of training, I was put with this other girl who had a bunch of piercings, including one on her gums. So we'll call her Miss Pierce. Apparently she's like 8 years younger than me, but she looks about the same age. And she kind of trained me in the way of like when someone just shows you everything like all at once, even the stuff that's common sense. And I try not to take it personally, but part of me thinks, does she think I'm stupid or something? Like she's telling me things that should be obvious. So there are really only 2 options. Either she thinks I'm stupid and that I don't know the most simplest of things, or she's just going through everything just in case to be on the safe side. Personally, I think it's both. The red-haired girl, again, talked about how Pierce is probably much better at training than she was, but honestly, while Pierce did show me a lot of useful stuff, I like the attitude of Red more. She just seemed more positive. I get the feeling that Pierce is already just annoyed with me because I'm not picking it up right away. Maybe she just really didn't seem like she wanted to bother with me, and that's pretty much been the case with everyone in the place except for Red and this one girl in the kitchen. And honestly, those 2 are the only people that have actually really been nice to me. I mean, nobody has been horrible yet, but most people, it's like they seem like they try to be nice, but in reality, their face is telling me, you are such an idiot for not getting this down right away. What is wrong with you? Yeah, I know it could be in my head, but 9 times out of 10, when I feel like I can read it in people's faces that they're secretly judging me and don't like me, I always turn out to be correct. So I trust my own intuition and my ability to read people's eyes. It really is the window to the soul, and I can tell most of the time. It tells me exactly what someone is thinking. So after going through some more basics, half of which I already forgot, because Pierce went by so fast explaining stuff and my dyspraxic brain just can't process so much information at one time, the owner went home, and I wasn't really dismissed yet, so I stayed around doing side work and helping Red and Pierce bust tables, get drinks, doing dishes, all that kind of stuff. Red was appreciative of me and told me that I was doing a good job, while Pierce only said anything to me if I made a mistake or she wanted to show me another way of doing things. Again, she seemed exasperated telling me, but it is what it is. It's not really easy dealing with me most of the time, so I could understand their plight. But I don't choose to be this way, and I try to manage the best that I can. Oh, I forgot one more thing. At one point, before he left, the owner wanted to see me get a table by myself, and he hovered over me, basically, on everything that I did, which, of course, made me uncomfortable, but I get it. Thing is, though, if you hover over me like that, I'm like 10 times more likely to make a mistake. So I got a bit nervous and was extremely awkward with the table, but they tipped me $9, which was nice, and they let me keep it, so I got $9 extra along with my training wage, which was like $8 an hour. The owner didn't really like my presentation, but then again, I missed a lot of like important stuff, like ask them about dessert, ask them how they want their steaks cooked, all that kind of stuff. But I'm just being thrown to the wolves. I'm new to all this stuff. I don't even know the menu at this point. I mean, I already made a mistake because there was some guy ordered they said like all our sandwiches, you ask how they want the meat cooked. So this person ordered a Swiss grilled chicken, which I know is a sandwich on our menu, but apparently it's also another dish. So I was treated like an idiot because I asked them how they want their meat cooked, and the guy said, "Oh, I want it cooked, all the way." And I was just like, and then Pierce was basically like, "Oh, he's new," that kind of he's new type thing. And then they started laughing at me, so I just explained to them. I was just getting kind of like, well, there's also a sandwich, and that's what I thought you meant. I don't know. But anyway, I'm usually good at interacting with people if I feel in control. But in situations like this, especially when I have to keep up with so many things and stay organized, my mind is so all over the place that I can't even talk to people properly. Anytime I have so much activity going on, like when I am talking to people while busy doing other stuff, like writing things down and just moving my hands, that disconnect between my brain and everything else makes me even more awkward, because while my brain is struggling to maintain control of everything, I can't focus any extraneous effort on speaking clearly. So I stumble and blank, and I just end up a complete social mess. It's so different from being a cashier, because as a cashier, you're just doing the same thing over and over again. Which, just the same motion, sliding things over a scanner and putting them in a bag. It gets tedious, but I have just enough control to be likable and conversational and basically a schmoozer. And that's why those customers always liked me and wanted to come to my line. Because unlike other cashiers, I'd actually have a smile and a joke, and I was a good diplomat. There was this guy in the kitchen, some bigger guy with a beard, who I guess was the manager. He would always sing this song, and still does, on repeat at the end of the night. He would sing this song that goes, "She told me put my heart in a bag and nobody gets hurt. Love, I'm not first. I'm a whole different person." Just over and over again. But I guess he was the manager whenever the boss guy left. And he showed me how to clock out at the end of the night and collect my tips, which on that night was only the one. And again, he seemed annoyed at having to show me how to do something the first time. And I knew I wasn't going to remember. And he was going to automatically expect me to remember the next time, which he did. And the next time, whenever I needed help, like putting in all my tips and all that at the end of the night, he just expected me to know how to do it because he showed me once. So I wasn't looking forward to having to be shown again. After that, he sent me home, and I didn't work again until Friday. I mean, just dealing with one table is stressful enough for me as a dyspraxic. If I wasn't dyspraxic or ADHD, I'd probably have no troubles, or at least not the same, not to this degree. but it always throws things off balance, and you have to be cautious about everything. I'm not really still bad about like the balance and stuff, because I already know at this point that I can't like just get a whole tray of food and just balance it on one hand. I always just have two, and I'm just careful about everything. So I haven't had any of those. They call them dyspraxidants, which a lot of dyspraxics will talk about having, knocking stuff over, dropping things. I don't have that much problem because I'm always like careful about how I do it, and my reflexes are pretty good. But it's the memory stuff, and it's the organizational stuff, the executive function, remembering the steps, just processing everything is just really hard for me, and that's one of the ways that dyspraxia affects me the most. But I end up seeming so spazzy and overwhelmed, like I just panic at any moment. And that was definitely picked up on by everyone. From then on, people either treated me with contempt, like I was totally useless, or would act gentle around me with this false positivity. Like, oh, you're doing good, you'll get it, that kind of stuff. I mean, I appreciate any support, but it makes you feel like a child. I'm not a big fan of pity, even if it seems like I seek it every now and then. The thing is, if I wasn't hyper alert and neurotic about everything, then everything would go wrong. If I relaxed for even a second at work, then everything just falls apart. That's why I can't imagine doing what my brother does at his serving job, where he works doubles almost every single night. Same with my sister. She loves being a waitress, and she seems to think she says that it's like the thing that she's really good at. Like she's hit her stride. She's found the thing that she's good at. And I'm just not the way it is for me. Just doing it for a couple of hours takes it out of me. I can do it for 1 hour and I'm already just like, I feel like I've done a day's work. Because it just takes so much out of you mentally. I mean, there's a reason I didn't want to go back to this kind of work again. And although there's still more to the story of my first week, I know this is kind of dragging on a bit. I can already tell you that I hope to God that I don't have to do this for much longer. I just hope I can find another job soon. One more suitable for my abilities. I'm sure some dyspraxics can find doing serving jobs, but, not me. There's so much to keep track of, and you have to be on top of everything. It's a fast-paced, high-pressure environment, which is just not good for me. Unless it's like theater or something, doing a play. That's different somehow. Although I like to be active at a job, like, where I can be active but go at my own pace. Those are the best jobs for me, but they are hard to come by. So Friday, I came in, and I was greeted by this new guy that I didn't really see my first 2 days. It was this black guy, who was one of those like really cool, nice black guys, but you can kind of tell that they could get real with you if you cross them. I mean, I don't know what it is. There's just people like that. That's not racist, is it? Anyway, he was cool, and he was trying to make sure that I was aware of all I was supposed to do. Like, he pointed out my section and all that. And I was worried about messing up, and I try to explain to people in simple terms that my memory isn't the greatest, and so sometimes things slip my mind. I hadn't yet explained to anyone my dyspraxia, but I'm sure it was coming eventually. So that day I had a 3-table section, which seemed easy enough at first glance. So I say that Red was the only person who was really nice to me. The black guy was pretty nice as well, but I get the feeling he could be biting if I screwed up majorly. But I didn't really get to work with him much before he left. And as of yet, I haven't really worked with him since. There was also the girl in the kitchen. Kind of attractive, not gonna lie. But I don't really date coworkers. Not because I'm not willing, but because any girl that would see me at work, well, that would probably kill any potential attraction when they see how much I struggle. So, I wouldn't really have a shot with this girl, but she was nice. Kind of had a resting bitch face. Like, she didn't really care about anything. But in the way that she acted, she was supportive and encouraging. So, therein lies your lesson. Don't judge a book by its cover. Not that I made that mistake, but There you go. Sometimes the people who have the resting bitch face are usually pretty nice. I don't exactly remember too much how that day went. If I made a whole lot of mistakes, I think I did. But again, I mean, a lot of days just kind of blend together after a little while. But I do remember it was very stressful, and by the end of it, I was just like really on edge. The thing about being a server is there's only two times, really. There's the time where nothing is going on and it's slow and you're just like, you don't really know what to do. And then there's the time when everything is happening all at once and you can't or you can barely keep up. So it seemed like when I got the 3 tables, it was like everything just came at once. Before I could finish getting drinks, I was sat at another table, and before I could take the first table's order, the third table was sat, and I would just be back and forth, not to mention having to keep up with dishes and bussing mine and other people's tables. It wasn't great. It got worse, but we'll get to that. By the end of the night, I was pretty stressed, and I decided to go down to Shelton Hall, this bar next to the Pint and Barrel just down the street. And while I was there, I don't know what compelled me, but there were these people sitting outside, and I just decided to go sit with them. I asked them if I could sit there, and this drunk redneck guy goes, "Yes, I do mind. Who the are you?" Then he told me he was kidding, so I sat down. He was going, sit there and shut up. And it was just kind of weird because it was like, clearly he was acting that way in jest. But he was he was just very forceful about it. Every time I made a joke, he would go, "Shut the up." And at one point, he looked at me and said, "I got bullets." And then he just like looked at me again, like just dead in the eyes, and just went, "I got bullets." And I had no idea what he meant by that, except maybe he was indicating that he was packing, so, this town ain't big enough for the two of us. Anyway, I was basically sat there listening to him tell these stories for an hour while these other people were just listening. I don't think they really knew each other either. I mean, it just seemed like strangers that were just drinking together. And I joined them, even though I felt out of place even then. When I finished my drink, I just kind of got up and left. It was weird because I kind of had an ounce of social interaction that night, but it was brief, and it wasn't like I was really welcomed there. So it was bittersweet, it was nice to hang out with people for a little bit, but it was like I forced myself into it. I just injected myself into their party, basically. It was only my first day after training, but I already knew that I wasn't very popular at this place, because it took me so long to finish my side work and roll my silverware, which of course came out crappy. We didn't get out until like 11, and I didn't get home until 11:45. And I remember it was the guy in the kitchen, and then there was this other guy, and I basically just said, I'm sorry that I keep making all these mistakes and that it's taken so long. I have this disability and stuff, and they were just like, "Oh, sorry, whatever," and I didn't really have any service on my phone. Hadn't really for months because I just didn't really need it. It just seemed like a waste of money because I wasn't really calling people and nobody was really calling me. So I had no way to reach my parents to pick me up. So I walked home after going to Shelton Hall, and whenever I got home, my mom was pretty upset. She's telling me that my dad and my brother had gone to look for me. Again, I was still pretty stressed, and so I was a bit irritable. And this kind of stuff really takes it out of you and takes its toll on you as a dyspraxic. There's only so much that we can handle, and I can't speak for all dyspraxics. I don't know anyone if they had the same experiences as I, but I think most of us can agree that we wouldn't really be the best in this line of work, and it wouldn't really be the best for our mental well-being. Anyway, my mom got emotional and said things like, "You can't do this to us." But I was like, I told her, it's not like I'm doing anything on purpose. We got out late and I decided to pop off for a drink. I'm sorry. I had no way to call. I have to admit I was a bit grouchy about it. And I probably could have acted better in that instance, especially when she asked why I didn't borrow anyone's phone. And I basically just snapped and said, I'm not going to borrow anyone's phone. All these people hate me. And she asked why, and I said, because I suck at this job. And it's really hard to explain stuff like that because they never really understood or accepted my dyspraxia. And it's not really something that we talk about. Shortly after that, my dad and brother came home, and my dad mentioned something about going to get a phone card at Walmart the next day, and so that's what we did. Only whenever we got the card, for some reason, when I tried to activate it, which I usually did by calling the number, it was usually this automated thing, and you put in the card number and restart your phone, and there you go. But it kept giving me this error message, which of course I forgot exactly what it said, but it wouldn't let me go, it wouldn't let me do it. And I was getting frustrated about it because I couldn't figure it out, and I tried to call the customer service line, but it was just the same exact number. I couldn't talk to an actual person, and my dad got mad at me for getting so mad, which was a little ironic on account of the fact that getting so mad at the little things is something that I picked up from him. Later on, somehow my mom figured it out and realized that apparently my phone number changed, and I guess that's what was causing the problems. I don't know why it changed. I didn't change it, but there you go. So that was a Friday. I didn't work Saturday, but I had to go back on Sunday at 11 in the morning instead of later in the evening. And of course, at most restaurants, the earlier shifts are slightly different from the evenings. Because when I got there, I wasn't really sure who was all there. So when people started coming in after I clocked in, I was the only one up front. I just decided to just sit them wherever and take them myself since no one else was around. Well, apparently people got mad that I did that because I was supposed to sit them in a different section and was supposed to give them to one of the openers who came in like half an hour earlier, just before me, which of course I wasn't really aware of who was there, who was opening, or what section they were in, or whatever, so I just did whatever I could do in the moment. I tried to explain this to people, but they didn't seem to understand or care about my explanation, and they just reiterated like I didn't understand, or wasn't listening to them, that I was supposed to give the seat customers in one of the openers sections, so, since they've been there longer. So yeah, things didn't exactly start off great that day. At one point, 2 people from the theater next door came in. I guess it was after church and before their little rehearsal for the show they're doing right now. I've had some issues, or they've had some issues with me in the past, which is a very long saga, I don't really know how I'm going to get into that at any point. But anyway, it's always been an awkward thing that hovers over my head whenever I see people from the theater. And probably for them too, but they walked in, and it was really awkward making pleasantries considering the bad blood that exists, at least maybe for me. I don't know, it's hard to explain. Anyway, I conveyed this to Pierce at one point, but she seemed confused and rather disinterested, and I wondered why I brought it up at all. I got to admit, after that, I was a bit worried that they heard me, but I doubt they did, and it's probably in my head. I happened to go to Walmart again, where I ran into some other people from the theater that I'm a bit more friendly with, I guess. One was a former friend, again, that's another long story, and the other was one of the directors that I've worked with before, who told me about auditions that he was holding for a show he was coming up with in early August. So we'll see if I want to try out for that. He said they were doing Sleepy Hollow, the musical. I don't really know that show. I couldn't find any of the songs online. We'll see what happens with that. But I don't know if they would even cast me because of past hang-ups. I mean, maybe him, because he never really seemed to have a problem with me. But I also, I recently shaved my head, so I don't really know if they would want to cast somebody that just has stubble on their head. Maybe in a supporting role, small kind of thing, I don't know. But we'll see, I suppose. Until my hair grows back, of course. Of course, if I do get cast, I would only be able to work in the morning. So we'll see if they'll let me do that. If I'm even still at the same place by then. We were off Monday because the store was closed, and I wasn't scheduled Tuesday. So Wednesday was the next day I worked, And this was the day that just about everything hit the wall. It was my first night with a full section, and it was just me and Red, and well, we'll just say I had difficulty keeping up with everything. I made a lot of mistakes and inconvenienced a lot of people that day, and though some were nicer about it, it was quite frustrating for everybody. I forgot people's drinks, their rolls that were supposed to be delivered to every table never got there. I had people waiting on me. I put in the wrong order, forgot to put in certain items. I got triple sat. I accidentally overcharged tables. Other tables paid for someone else's check. Just everything was going wrong. Though in all fairness, it wasn't just me. As I later found out, the kitchen was also having a lot of issues too. I remember I had this one lady who complained that her potatoes looked old and the corn was overdone, and I had the poor misfortune of having to convey that to the kitchen, who seemed to take it like it was a personal attack from me. You know how they say, don't shoot the messenger? Well, I'm basically the UPS Tupac. We also ran out of stuff like sugar for the tea and sour cream for the baked potatoes, which of course the customers were not happy about. It seemed like we had gotten really slammed, but it was probably just me not being able to keep up with even a slight rush. What happens when you're dyspraxic is when things are going by so fast and you're making so many mistakes, your brain gets put in a corner and it gets to this point where it just shuts down and you can't even process anything and you can't even think. And so when you need help correcting those mistakes that you make, you can't think clearly enough to even tell them what the mistakes are that need fixing. This happened before at my last restaurant, and people just get mad at me. And eventually I think I'm going to read out some of my old blog posts from when I was there, and I talked about my experiences, because they really do explain sort of what it's like for the first time, dyspraxics, waiting tables, at least for me. I realized as I was making all these mistakes how ill-suited this line of work was for me, and I for it, and I just couldn't deal with the fact that I was inconveniencing so many people. That at one point, I took Red aside and I said, "This will be the last night that you're working with me." And she had this look on her face like, oh shit, like she could see I couldn't deal with it. I think people have this image of me that I'm very meek and timid and can't deal with anything. But they don't really quite understand why that is, and that it's in no way their fault. And I don't want anyone to think I'm blaming them. If people don't know, they don't know, and that's why I try to explain to people about my dyspraxia. So I decided I needed to talk to the owner. I had hoped he hadn't left for the day, and I asked the girl in the kitchen if he did, and she said that he had gone outside, and she asked if everything was okay. I just kind of laughed nervously. I told her that I don't know, and that it was complicated. And she said, "I don't mean to sound nosy, but is something wrong? You could tell me." So I explained to her in the simplest terms I could about my disability, that I wasn't really suited for this line of work. See, she suggested that instead of quitting, I try to see about working as a dishwasher or something, as their last dishwasher apparently quit. And she said, "I'm not promising he'll do it, but it's worth talking to him about it instead of just quitting completely." Anyway, I ended up talking to him later on after I got cut, and I spent quite a while explaining everything to him. I started with, I don't know how to explain this, but I'll try my best. And then I just kind of went off. My mind just kind of trailed ablaze as I explained to him about my dyspraxia, how it affected me, how it causes all these little problems, and why I'm making so many mistakes. And that was frustrating, having to screw things up for everybody. And I just kind of gave him a lecture or something. It was like giving him a TED Talk. I just kept going on and on. But I was pretty clear and concise, and I think I explained things pretty well. Basically, his response was that we can put me back at 3 table sections, and if I needed help, just to let him know. So that was basically it. I didn't quit yet. I did all my night work, but of course I forgot a lot of stuff. I didn't sweep my section well enough, and it took quite a bit of time. The guy who worked in the kitchen, who was like the manager when the owner went home, would like put salt at the end of the table if it needed to be swept again, and ketchup at the end of the table if it needed to be wiped down again, I guess. Um, but yeah, Red ended up doing some of my duties just to get us out quicker. I was rolling silverware with this other guy who worked there. He was the guy who was there the night that I told him that, about my disability when we got out late. But he wasn't working that day. He just kind of came in and sat at the bar for some reason and helped us roll silverware at the end of the night. He was wearing green, and it was kind of short, so I'll refer to him as Patty. So I told him, and the guy in the kitchen, of course, that I had the disability. And so that night, while we were rolling silverware, he asked me about the disability, what it was, and he then explained to me some of his mental health stuff, which, of course, I won't talk about here. But we basically mutually agreed that it was better to have people know these things about us so that we know what we're working with. Um, then we talked about going to sing karaoke at the bar the next night. And he was talking to me about his exploits with women. Apparently, there were many. And he had this bet with the other guy in the kitchen that he would end up hooking up with the girl in the kitchen within 2 months. Personally, I have my doubts about his success, but it's whatever. Not my business. But we talked about going to the Outlaw, that bar, to sing karaoke the next night. At the end of the night, I apparently still had a table open, and the people there, I guess I took too long or something, so I guess they decided not to pay, but they basically just voided it out. Of course, that would end up happening to me. All in all, despite how awful the day went, I mean, it was a horrible night, but I felt a little bit better about it after talking to the manager and getting everything off my chest, as well as, just being shown a little bit of kindness from that girl in the kitchen, Red, and Patty. It made me feel a little bit better about the circumstances. The next day, which was Thursday, I didn't really work with the same people. I wasn't really working with the people that I was getting along with, like Red or that girl in the kitchen. None of them were there. Patty worked at the kitchen, but he didn't seem like he was in a very good mood. The only other server besides me was the young tall girl, who I learned that day was just 16, which explained why she was kind of snobby, as most 16-year-old girls usually are, and she seemed like a stereotypical one to me, basically. Probably a bit spoiled, lots of friends, probably dated a lot of guys. I don't know, and I don't really care. But of course, there was no commonality between me and her, and so we didn't really speak much at all. The only times that we did, it just came to job related stuff, and even then, we barely communicated anything, and only if we absolutely had to. So it was really awkward, especially at the end of the night when we were rolling silverware in total silence. I only had 3 tables, of course, while she had basically the entire rest of the restaurant, which probably annoyed her. In fact, my ineptitude probably annoyed everyone. But there weren't any major slip-ups like there were the day before. We have this dumb rule, which I guess is a legal thing, where you have to have a certain certificate. I think it's called a CABC or something to serve alcohol, which in our case is only beer and wine. And if we don't have the certificate, we're not allowed to touch the alcohol. So when I had a table order a beer, I asked the girl if she could get it for me. And that's when she told me that she was only 16, and so of course she wasn't allowed to serve alcohol. The girl seemed rather annoyed with me, but she didn't really express it, except in her face, of course, which I guess is okay, but I could feel the tension in her body language. I'm sure she was thinking, why do I have to work with this weirdo who can barely deal with 3 tables? And I don't blame her. I don't blame any of them. Like, conceptually, I think, how could a person struggle to keep up with just 3 tables? But somehow I end up finding a way. I did have some trouble keeping up with things, and again, I would forget to bring rolls to the tables. I didn't do that at all in Montana. That wasn't something that we did. So it's just something like a force of habit. Like, I just kept forgetting. Um, and some people did have to wait, but of course, it wasn't all because of me. I know Patty got a bit irritated with me at one point because for my last table, the guy ordered a steak with shrimp, and I forgot to put in the shrimp, so the guy had to wait as he grilled up some shrimp, and he just told me, You need to remember to put it in. I guess he was just in a bad mood, and there was no further talk about going to sing karaoke. I really hate my stupid memory. It's like I always want to tell people I'm not trying to screw things up and forget things. Like I'm trying my best, but I knew that it would never be good enough. Even if they were to try to be accommodating, and say, well, we all make mistakes. I know in their mind they're thinking, I wish I didn't have to work with this screw up. And I'm sure the manager, as always is the case with every place that I work, is just regretting hiring me at all. I mean, it probably would be more convenient for them if I just didn't work there. He probably wouldn't even have hired me at all if I told them I had the disability at the interview. They never do when I tell them. And I have this theory that I can't prove, of course, but I have noticed that every job I've ever had, I didn't tell them that I was dyspraxic at the interview. And every interview I've ever had where I did tell them about it, they never hired me. But of course, they have plausible deniability, so it's not like I can claim discrimination or anything. After I got off work that day, I decided to go to the Outlaw one street over, because I had talked to Patty about it the night before, but he didn't seem interested that day, so I just went by myself and sang one song. I had a Dos Equis and a cherry bomb, I think, which totaled about $10 in all, but it didn't matter. I was going to sing two songs, the first one being Vienna by Billy Joel, which I've always wanted to sing at karaoke, and I had like 12 people before me. So I sat, drank my cherry bomb, and watched the other performers, who all ended with rousing applause. Then like 3 people before me, I went up to the DJ and asked him how many people were after me, and he said not many. So I asked to sing another song, which was Queen, The Show Must Go On, but I guess he misunderstood, because when I went up to sing the first song, it was the Queen song and not the Billy Joel song, and so I was a bit caught off guard, but I sang it nonetheless, and well, let's just say that I'm not Freddie Mercury. I'm one of those people that sings much better in the shower than in front of a crowd with a loud backing track. And to avoid my voice cracking, I had to basically scream out the more grandiose lines of the song. And whenever it was over, it was just dead silence. I think it's because up to that point, everyone else was singing like country songs. And I guess the song that I chose kind of disrupted the vibe. But regardless, I was the only one who got no applause after they sang. And I went up to the DJ and I told him that I still wanted to sing that Billy Joel song. But by that point, I had like 6 people ahead of me, and he decided to take a 10-minute break, so I just left. When I got home, a few of my friends, who all, of course, live thousands of miles away, wanted to do a Facebook video call. So we did that, and it was kind of fun, but I was a bit depressed and drunk and all that. I hate being so depressed, but that's just my life. I'm not going to lie, and I know it annoys people, but this is just my reality. My life sucks. I have nothing really to say about it. You know, I'm just here to suffer, and I'm not really enjoying anything in life, not even the podcast. And because I know it sucks, and I know it's unfocused and all over the place, and I'm just rambling, and it's probably really boring, but I just do it because I want to create something. And I'm not motivated to write anything because it just won't lead anywhere ultimately. But I have some good friends who listen to this, and I appreciate you guys if you're still listening to this at this point. Like, I don't think I'd be willing to continue doing this if it weren't for you. But I'm sure it doesn't affect your lives in any notable way. You certainly wouldn't listen to it if you didn't know me personally. And I just don't know how to appeal to a wide audience. I'm not really very good at that kind of stuff. But so the next night was actually the cast party, and for the play that they're doing at the theater next door, which was 9 to 5, the musical, the Dolly Parton stuff, which I've seen the movie. So I was able to follow. You know, I knew basically what it was going to be. But they were going to have the cast party at our restaurant that night, that Friday, which was, it wasn't opening night, but it was the day after opening night, basically. And and so we were actually going to stay open later. I think the cast party is supposed to start at 10:30. We usually close at like 9:30, sometimes 10. depending on the day of the week. I forget which day we closed that day, but yeah, we were going to stay open. But I ended up being first cut. So I decided, well, I'm not going to be able to see these people at the cast party, so I'll just stop by the theater and see if anybody's in the lobby. I just kind of expected just this. But anyway, I went to the theater, and I went to the lobby, and they were towards the end of intermission, so there were a bunch of people in there. And so I talked to a few people. One of the people that I talked to was one of the two that came in a couple of days before, who I had some tension with. But he was pleasant to me, and he asked me if I wanted to see the rest of the show. I said, "Oh, well, how much is it?" And he just went like, "Do you want to see the rest of the show?" And basically, just you can see it for free. You don't have to pay, which was really nice of him to do that for me. But there was only one seat. There's only seating available in the lobby because they were sold out. So I went up to the the balcony. So I went upstairs to the balcony, and I watched the rest of the show. It was entertaining. It was Dolly Parton songs, so it was good. And then afterwards, I ran into a couple of people, including this woman named Sandy, who I did some plays with whenever I did theater there before. And I basically just ended up going to the cast party with her. And it was kind of awkward because it wasn't awkward. Like, it was nice being able to be around some of the theater people, especially since I haven't seen most of them since I moved back, and it's been so long. And I had dinner with them, with Sandy and her daughter. And even though I was going to use my discount for my food, her daughter paid for me, which was really nice of her, and she didn't have to do that. But why it was awkward was because I was still in my uniform, and all my coworkers were there, and they were kind of scrambling around because there wasn't a whole lot of them, and there was like a 50 top whole section of people. And I guess I don't know, they probably weren't expecting to see me a part of that. And so it was weird having to interact with them as a customer, to and I having to ask for stuff because I had ordered the chicken fried steak, which was really good, and I wanted like gravy and honey mustard on the side, and they didn't give it to me, so I had to ask for it was just all this kind of stuff. So it was just a little bit awkward. But and they were probably wondering, why is this guy hanging out with them? Like, I guess he knows these people. But that's more my scene. I mean, these people, again, they don't know what I'm like outside of work. And so it's probably unusual for them to see that I actually have a social side. So anyway, I covered a lot in this episode. I know most of it probably wasn't that interesting. But if anybody stuck it around to the end, I want to thank you for your endurance. But thank you for listening. Please support the channel. And again, sorry for the rambling and sorry for the depressing stuff. It's really hard for me to shake that off. I mean, it's a wonder I can even get out of bed at this point. I'm such a broken man. Anyway, not sure when it's going to be, but I mentioned in the first podcast that I would give my thoughts on the Harry Potter series and sort of my each installment. I was going to rank each of them as well. So I still plan on doing that, maybe in my next episode. So stay tuned for that. Hopefully it'll be a little bit more lighthearted and interesting. Eventually I'll talk a little bit more about what's been going on at work or whatever in my life. And I hope you get some value out of that. And if you want to end up coming on here as a guest, or you have questions you would like me to ask, or certain things you want me to talk about, my opinions on, my thoughts on, if you want me to read something out loud, again, all that stuff I'm completely available to do. So that about does it for today. I hope that you all enjoyed it. Peace out and stay good to one another. You got my heart in a bag. Blah, blah, blah.